Danny and Jon in the same place at the same time. There are TV show fans that have been waiting for 7 years for this, and book fans that have been waiting longer than half my life. You want to know how it turns out? Or maybe more importantly, is it a clue to how this story's going to end? Welcome to the heart of the stories we tell. My name is Rob, and tonight I will be reviewing Game of Thrones Episode 3, Season 7, The Queen's Justice. And the little synopsis says, Daenerys holds court, Cersei returns a gift, and Jaime learns from his mistakes. But I get the feeling there's going to be a lot more to it than that, because there's always more ice and fire. The one I'm mostly curious about is whether the Queen is Daenerys, or if it's Cersei. But if this is the first time you've reached this channel, hit that subscribe button in order to follow all of my weird theories and all of my storytelling inspirations as we explore and look at the heart of all of the stories we tell, and I review Game of Thrones every single week that it's on. But for now, we need to get into this episode, and we need to talk about where the fire and the ice actually go and come from. So let's get started with this showdown that's coming. So once again, it's stop. Spoiler time. And since this is on HBO, and who is Martin a crazy SOB, and Dan and Dave are going for a lot of shock value the last couple of years, I figure I'll just throw this up here too. Just, in general, lots of sex and violence and sexual violence in this series. In a series full of badass, awesome characters. Well, not that full anymore, since a whole bunch of them are dead. And they do not disappoint. I have to say, when we started off on Dragonstone with Jon and Davos landing, there was part of me that said, really, we're starting here? Well, that's a good sign, because the last couple of weeks, the scenes that I've been waiting for are near the end. But, whew. Alright, so, just to recap, Jon won't bend the knee, and Daenerys is stubborn. Well, yeah, we already knew all of that. I do like the way they did a lot of the scenes. I like the way they have Davos trying to speak for Jon. I liked the difference in the way they act, too. Daenerys had all of her titles, and then Jon was all like, this is Jon Snow. He's the king in the north. I mean, it's just one of those things where pomp and circumstance, inherited title, compared to just being who you are. I went into this episode expecting the big problem to be Melisandre, and the fact that Varys and her were going to end up costing the Alliance at the beginning of the season, and at the end of the season it would pay off. But instead Mel left, and I did like the little subtle threat to Varys. The fact that she said that they both had to die in this weird country. I hope to see her again shortly. But okay, so Tyrion was still playing the peacemaker here, and the fact that Grey Worm wasn't in any of the rooms should have told us that they had already sent the Unsullied out towards the Castle Rock goal, but I liked the way that played out later in the episode, too. In fact, all in all, the pacing of tonight was one of the best episodes I've seen in a while. Definitely the best paced episode this season. And the fact that she's giving Jon the dragon glass that he needs is just perfect, because right now she is going on the verge of needing everything she can get. Now, my gut instinct is that the reason we see Jon going north of the wall in the previews is because she's going to need proof. And if you think about it, if someone came to you and said, hey, this mythological figure, this big boogeyman is coming to get you, what would you have said? I mean, the others are coming isn't exactly a inspiring call. I do think they buried the lead, though. The fact that Jon was resurrected by Mel should have been brought up. But then we transition from one queen to another, and I have to ask, what is it with all these people cheering for Cersei's side? And, I mean, yeah, I know Euron's the one who's getting the cheers, but I mean, seriously, how is... I mean, I guess they kind of hanged a lampshade on it by having Euron say, hey, they cheer for whoever it is that's winning. They just want to see heads on the wall. But there's part of me that thinks that Tywin's rolling over in his grave at the lack of foresight. And I did totally love Euron once again hitting Jaime with the whole in public. So tell me, what type of sex does she like? Does she like this or that? And then just walking away. No, you could tell me later. When he couldn't just be like, up yours. Now, cutting into Greyjoy, Theon Greyjoy being rescued, was kind of weird. I wasn't quite sure what they were doing with it. I guess they just wanted to showcase the fact that he did make it off, and why didn't Euron just capture him in the water? I don't know. But alright, so Cersei has this plan, and basically it comes down to this. She's going to string Euron along with the promise of marriage and the promise of being king of the Seven Kingdoms, and he gets it when they win the war. And of course, once they win the war, he has no bargaining power left because she doesn't need him anymore. So it's a good play, as long as she isn't promising him anything right now, I guess. I still think it's weird. But then comes all the stuff with the sand snakes. Oof, she is vicious. But no show is perfect, and I have to say, the part of tonight's episode that kind of bugged me was in Old Town. Now, I'm kind of getting over the fact that they're treating Sam more like a pledge than like a student, even though he should be learning in like classes, taking notes, all of that. But the fact is that he saved Jorah's life, and it was just way so easy. I mean, the fact that the maester even was like, oh, it looks like someone peeled all the infected area off and applied ointment. Yeah, if that's all it takes, I mean, yeah, it was pretty hideous, but I mean, I imagine you could also just knock someone out with milk of the puppy. Sam just didn't. I mean, he used wine and Jorah was just, super tough badass. Then again, there's also part of me that says they don't understand how to scrub and how to disinfect, so that whole room's covered in potential grayscale. But Sam's reward is not being kicked out of the Citadel, and I guess that's pretty good for someone who was forbid by an Archmaester. But at the same time, I wish that we could have moved that forward a little more, especially with Jorah now going back to Daenerys. I guess he's going to end up joining with Jon, going north of the Wall, is my guess. But right now, I really wish that he was just asked. Like, I mean, seriously, Sam could have been like, your dad really wanted you to join the Night's Watch. Your dad really believed in this. By the way, the dead are rising, and your dad is going to be pissed in the other world if you don't fight to stop it. But maybe in the overall world of Fire and Ice, it just isn't that simple. Alright, so then we have this scene where they're taking Casterly Rock. And you know what? Where I've disliked the end scenes of the last two episodes, this one I really liked. I love the fact that Tyrion is like, oh, well, this, that, and it'll be hard, and then boom. Well, no, it's a trick, because taking Casterly Rock is way easier than you'd think. Because Casterly Rock isn't being guarded, because Jaime's a tactical genius. I love how it's pretty much a cat and mouse game between Tyrion and Jaime. Oh, well, my father didn't know that I had this way of sneaking whores in through the sewers. Oh, well, my brother didn't know that I totally moved the forces out of there. And why? Because I let him take Casterly Rock because it's useless. And we took all the grain storage, so they can't stay there. So they're going to have to march their troops home because Euron blew up their boats. It was a pretty good plan, even though I question the timing of how fast Euron moves around that map. But speaking of people who move around the map, Littlefinger has been pretty stationary this year. Him and Sansa are in Winterfell, and he actually gives some good advice to her for a change. Don't just fight the battle you're in right now. Fight the battle everywhere in your mind. And it's a pretty good thing. In fact, I wish he had said it to Jon instead of Sansa, because it's something Jon needs to learn, how to think of the bigger picture. Then we get the scene where Bran is home, though. And you know what? It really felt heartfelt when Sansa was greeting him and they were hugging. But then once they got to the heart tree, I felt like being like, dude, you're not explaining this well. It's not even just, oh, it's hard to explain what being the three-eyed raven means. No, you could totally be like, it's a title that gets passed down, and I was taught by the last one, now I'm that. And I have the ability to see through the trees and through the world, and let me tell you about your wedding, instead of just be like, oh, it's hard to explain. But bad explanations aside, I did like when he was all like, oh, I need to talk to Jon, because he knows something about R plus L equals J. But alright, for those of you that have already read the books, I do wonder how much of this is just, a more expedited way to get to where we're getting anyway. Because if you think about it, having everyone back on the same page is what George Martin's been having a problem with, trying to get the Marinese knot untied. So, even if this isn't exactly how things are going to end up, it's at least where people are going to end up. Daenerys somewhere in the Seven Kingdoms with the dragons, Jon needing to ask her for help. And going with Jon, remember how I said I think he could have used that lesson? If I were him, I would have been like, yeah, well, we're mining the dragon glass. Why don't you purposely keep some for your armies? If we fail, you might need to use it too. Overall, I do like the build to the crescendo for this season. What do you think, though? Let me know down in the comment section what you think is most important out of tonight's episode, and what scene you liked best. And in the meantime, if you could throw me a like and a share, I'd appreciate it. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and enable the alerts so that we can build a community. Because what I'd like to do is talk about not just Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, but about all stories and what we can learn about them, and what we can learn about each other and ourselves through them. But for now, I hope that you have a good night, and thank you for walking with me through the heart of the stories we tell.